Have you ever wondered if a nursing home is really the best choice for your golden years? I did. At 82, I thought I was making the right decision. My family reassured me that I'd be taken care of, that I'd have everything I needed: comfort, security, companionship. I trusted them, but the moment I stepped through those doors, I knew something was wrong. The reality was nothing like what I had imagined. If I had known then what I know now, I would have fought to stay in my own home for as long as possible. I lost more than just a house. I lost control over my own life. My freedom, my privacy, my sense of purpose, even my connection to my family, started slipping away faster than I could grasp. And the worst part, by the time I realized the full impact of my decision, it was too late to turn back. Nursing homes may seem like a solution, but they come with hard truths that no one tells you about until you're already inside. Maybe you're thinking about this option for yourself or a loved one. Maybe you believe it's the safest choice, the most practical decision. I understand. But before you make a move you can't undo, I want to share with you the 6 painful regrets I live with every single day. Some of them might shock you. Some of them might even make you reconsider everything you thought you knew about nursing homes. But if I had heard these truths before I moved in, I would have made a very different choice. Stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to tell you could save you from making a mistake you'll regret forever. Regret number 1, losing my independence. The biggest shock after moving into a nursing home wasn't the small room, the scheduled meals, or even the unfamiliar faces. It was the moment I realized I had lost control over my own life. Before, I lived on my terms. I decided when to wake up, when to eat, and how to spend my days. I could take a walk whenever I wanted, make my own coffee, or simply sit in my favorite chair, lost in a good book. But in the nursing home, none of that was up to me anymore. Everything ran on a schedule that wasn't mine. Breakfast was served at a set time, even if I wasn't hungry. Lights went out at night whether I was ready for bed or not. Want to step outside for fresh air? You might need permission, and even then, you'll probably have to wait until someone is available to assist you. The simple, everyday choices I once took for granted, what to eat, what to wear, how to spend my time, became privileges rather than rights. I still remember my first morning there. I woke up in a bed that didn't feel like mine, reached for the book I had been reading at home, and then it hit me. This wasn't my home. My books, my cozy armchair, the little comforts I had spent years surrounding myself with were gone. In their place were sterile walls, a stiff bed, and an emptiness that settled deep in my chest. That was the moment I understood. I wasn't in control of my life anymore. The hardest part was realizing that once you give up your independence, getting it back is almost impossible. At first, you fight it. You insist on making your own choices, resisting the rigid schedules and the rules you never agreed to. But over time, you adapt, because you have to. You stop asking if you can eat something different for dinner. You stop requesting to go outside whenever you feel like it. You learn to fit into their system, but in the process, you start losing yourself. I met a man named Henry who had moved in 6 months before me. He was once full of life, a man who loved gardening, fixing things and keeping busy. But now, he sat in a chair for hours, staring out the window. I used to wake up excited for the day, he told me one evening. Now I wake up just to follow orders. I knew exactly what he meant. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, are you truly ready to give up the small freedoms that make life yours? Because once they're gone, you'll miss them more than you ever imagined. You'll miss choosing what time to wake up. You'll miss opening your fridge and picking out whatever you want to eat. You'll miss the ability to just step outside and feel the sun on your skin without having to ask permission. And once that freedom is taken away, it's nearly impossible to get it back. Regret number 2, feeling forgotten. One of the hardest truths about moving into a nursing home is realizing just how quickly the world moves on without you. When I first arrived, my family reassured me that they would visit often. I believed them, and in the beginning they did. My daughter came by once a week. My grandchildren visited on weekends. For a little while, it felt like I still had a connection to my old life, but as the months went by, the visits became less frequent. My daughter started calling instead of coming. My grandchildren got busy with school and work. Holidays were the hardest. Everyone promised they'd come, but somehow plans always changed at the last minute. And suddenly, I found myself sitting alone in the common room, watching other residents stare at the door, hoping today would be the day someone remembered them. It wasn't that my family stopped loving me. Life just got in the way. When you're not around every day, it's easy for people to assume you're fine, that you're adjusting, that you don't need as much attention. But the truth is, the longer you're in a nursing home, the easier it is for people to forget just how much you still need them. I remember one evening sitting in my room, holding my phone, debating whether to call my son. I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to remind him that I was here, waiting for a visit that might never come. So I put the phone down. And that was when it hit me. This was my life now. Watching the days go by, hoping someone would remember to include me. I saw it happen to so many others. There was Margaret, a sweet woman with a sharp mind and a warm laugh. When she first arrived, her children visited every Sunday without fail. But over time, the gaps between visits grew longer. One day I saw her sitting by the window, her eyes distant. "They used to come every week," she whispered. "Now I just hope they remember to call." I didn't know what to say because I understood exactly how she felt. Loneliness isn't just about being alone. It's about feeling like you no longer matter, like your presence or absence makes no real difference in the world outside these walls. The silence becomes deafening. The long hours stretch endlessly, filled with nothing but waiting. The worst part, you start to accept it. You tell yourself you don't mind, that you're fine on your own. But deep down, you ache for the sound of a familiar voice, for the warmth of a hug, for someone to simply look at you and say, "I'm glad you're here." If you're thinking about moving into a nursing home, ask yourself, are you prepared for the loneliness? Because no matter how much your family loves you, once you're out of sight, it's easier than you think to become out of mind. Regret, number 3, losing my sense of purpose. When I moved into the nursing home, I thought I was just changing where I lived. I didn't realize I was also changing why I lived. At home, I had responsibilities. I had routines. I had a reason to get up in the morning. Even the simplest things, watering my plants, making my own coffee, tidying up my space, gave me a sense of purpose. But when I entered the nursing home, all of that disappeared. Meals were brought to me. Cleaning was done by someone else. The little routines that had once structured my day were no longer mine to keep. At first, I told myself it would be nice to finally relax. No more chores, no more responsibilities, just time to rest. But after a few weeks, I realized something was missing. The days felt long, stretched out before me, with nothing to do but wait. I saw it in other residents, too. People who had once been full of energy now spent their days sitting, staring, waiting for time to pass. I met a man named George, 84 years old, a carpenter for most of his life. At home, he was always fixing things, always working on small projects in his garage. But here, there were no tools, no projects, nothing for him to create. I watched as he slowly withdrew. His once skilled hands, always busy with wood and nails, now sat idle in his lap. "I feel useless," he told me one day, and I knew exactly what he meant. When you no longer have something to care for, something to work toward, life starts to lose its meaning. The mind slows down, the body follows, and soon you start to feel like just another resident in a place where time moves, but nothing really changes. I tried to find new ways to fill my days, playing cards, watching television, even participating in scheduled activities. But it wasn't the same. These weren't things I chose for myself. They were just distractions from the emptiness I felt. Inside, I used to take pride in the things I accomplished, no matter how small. I loved cooking my own meals, keeping my house in order, helping my neighbors when they needed something. But in the nursing home, there was no one to help, no work to be done, nothing to build or create. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was just existing rather than living. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, what gives your life meaning? Because once you move in, finding purpose isn't as simple as filling your time. It's about fighting to hold onto the things that make you feel alive. And once that sense of purpose starts to fade, it takes more than just activities and distractions to bring it back. It takes the will to keep going, even when everything around you tells you to simply sit back and wait for the days to pass. Regret number 4. Health declines faster than expected. Before I moved into a nursing home, I was doing well for my age. I wasn't running marathons, but I could take care of myself, go for walks, and cook my own meals. I had a routine that kept me moving, grocery shopping, stretching in the mornings, even just walking around the house kept my legs strong. But once I moved in, everything changed. At first, I told myself I was just taking it easy. Meals were brought to me, so I no longer had to stand in the kitchen to cook. If I needed something, I could just press a button and someone would come help. It felt convenient, but what I didn't realize was that the less I did for myself, the weaker I became. I stopped moving as much, and soon my legs felt stiffer. I sat more than I used to, and before I knew it, getting up from a chair started feeling like a chore. The muscles I had spent years maintaining were disappearing faster than I ever expected, and it wasn't just me. I saw it happen to others, too. People who had walked in on their own 2 feet were suddenly relying on wheelchairs. Residents who had been independent now needed help with things they had never struggled with before. The more help we were given, the more we seemed to need it. I met a woman named Alice, 81 years old, full of energy when she first arrived. She insisted that she would keep moving, that she wouldn't let this place slow her down. But after a few months, I noticed she wasn't walking as much. Then she started using a walker, then a wheelchair. One day, she looked at me with tired eyes and said, "I don't know when it happened, but I feel like I aged 10 years in just a few months." That's exactly what it felt like. When you stop using your body, you start losing it. And in a nursing home, where everything is designed to make life easier, it's easy to forget that movement isn't just about convenience, it's about survival. I wish I had known how quickly I would lose my strength. I wish I had fought harder to keep moving, to stay active, to push myself even when I didn't feel like it. But when everything around you encourages you to slow down, it becomes harder and harder to fight against it. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, will you still have the motivation to keep your body strong when everything is set up to make life effortless? Because once you slow down, getting back up isn't as easy as you think. It's not just about aging, it's about what happens when you stop doing the very things that keep you strong. And by the time you realize what's happening, it might be too late to reverse it. Regret number 5. The loss of privacy and dignity. One thing I never fully considered before moving into a nursing home was just how much privacy I would lose. At home, I had my own space. I could close my bedroom door, sit in silence if I wanted, and do things on my own terms. But here, privacy is a luxury you don't always get to keep. From the moment I arrived, I felt like I was constantly being watched. Staff members came in and out without warning. Room checks were routine, even when I didn't want them. Shared spaces meant I was rarely alone. Even simple things, getting dressed, using the bathroom, or deciding when to sleep, often required someone else's assistance. I know the staff was just doing their job, but that didn't make it any easier. It's hard to accept help for things you've done independently your entire life. I remember my first week struggling with the idea that I had to ask for permission to do things I once did without thinking. Want to take a shower? You might have. To wait until someone is available to help. Need to use the restroom? Press the call button, and sometimes you wait longer than you'd like. Even meal choices were limited. If you don't like what's on the menu that day, too bad. Then there's the issue of roommates. Not everyone gets a private room, and sharing a space with a stranger isn't always easy. I was lucky to have a kind roommate, but others weren't as fortunate. I met people who had to share rooms with residents who were loud, unclean, or struggling with cognitive issues that made sleep nearly impossible. And no matter how much you try to make your room feel like home, it never truly is. But the hardest part, losing my dignity. I wasn't prepared for how it would feel to be spoken to like a patient instead of a person. To have people knock, but not always wait for an answer before coming in. To have my daily routines dictated by a schedule I didn't create. It changes you. It makes you feel like you're not in charge of your own life anymore. I remember one particularly difficult moment when a nurse was helping me get dressed. I felt embarrassed, exposed, and ashamed that I could no longer do something so simple on my own. She was kind about it, but that didn't change how I felt inside. I had spent a lifetime being independent, making my own choices, taking care of myself, and now all of that was slipping away. If you're thinking about moving into a nursing home, ask yourself, are you prepared to give up the privacy and control you've had your entire life? Because once it's gone, it's hard to get back. Dignity isn't something you realize you'll miss until it's already taken from you. Regret number 6, realizing it's harder to leave than you think. When I first moved into the nursing home, I told myself it was temporary. I thought I'd give it a try, see how things went, and if I didn't like it, I could always leave. That belief gave me comfort. It made the transition easier. But what I didn't realize was just how hard it would be to get out once I was in. At first, it seemed simple. If I didn't like it, I'd just go back home. But home wasn't the same anymore. My house had been sitting empty, and maintaining it from a distance became difficult. My children had already started making changes, selling things they thought I wouldn't need, even considering renting out the place. When I finally worked up the courage to say I wanted to move back, their response wasn't what I expected. Are you sure you can manage on your own? Wouldn't it be safer to stay? We just want what's best for you. And then there was the issue of my own physical decline. After months of living in a place where I no longer had to cook, clean, or even walk very far, I wasn't as strong as I used to be. The independence I once had was slipping away, making the idea of living alone seem overwhelming. I wasn't as confident in my ability to care for myself, and that fear kept me stuck. I met others who had the same experience. They had entered the nursing home thinking they could leave whenever they wanted, only to realize that leaving wasn't as easy as they thought. The longer they stayed, the harder it became to adjust to life outside. Some even lost the option entirely. Once their home was sold or their savings were drained by the cost of care, there was no going back. One day, I spoke with a woman named Judith. She had only planned to stay for a short time while recovering from surgery, but as the months passed, she became more dependent on the facility's care. I never meant to stay this long, she admitted to me one afternoon, but now I don't know how I'd manage on my own. That was the moment it truly sank in for me. Most people don't leave. They think they can, but they don't. That's the part nobody tells you. Moving in feels like a decision you can reverse, but for most people it isn't. The nursing home slowly becomes your whole world, and before you know it, The life you once knew starts feeling like a distant memory. The freedom you thought you still had disappears. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, are you prepared for the possibility that once you go in, leaving might not be as simple as you think? Because once you settle in, the barriers, whether financial, physical, or emotional, can be harder to overcome than you ever expected. Looking back, I don't regret growing older, but I do regret believing that a nursing home was my only option. I walked in expecting comfort, safety, and a better quality of life. What I found instead was a world that slowly took away my independence, my privacy, my purpose, and even my sense of self. Does that mean all nursing homes are bad? Not necessarily. Some people genuinely need the level of care they provide, and for certain situations, they can be a lifesaver. But before you make that decision, think carefully about what you're giving up, because once you move in, life will never be the same. If I could do it over again, I would have fought harder to stay in my own home. I would have looked for alternative options, hiring home care, joining a senior community, or even making small adjustments to my house to accommodate my needs. Anything to avoid giving up control over my own life. I didn't realize how much my freedom meant to me until it was taken away, and by then it was too late. I share this not to scare you, but to help you make an informed decision. If you or a loved one are considering a nursing home, take the time to ask yourself the hard questions. Are you truly ready to give up your independence? Are you prepared for the possibility of being forgotten? Have you thought about how it might affect your health, your sense of purpose, your dignity? And most importantly, are you sure you'll be able to leave if you ever change your mind? Because what I've learned is that once you step through those doors, it's not as easy to walk back out, and by the time you realize the full weight of that decision, it might be too late to undo it. I don't share this because I'm bitter. I share it because I wish someone had told me these things before I moved in. I wish I'd heard from someone who had lived through it, who had experienced firsthand what it really meant to give up the life they once knew. Maybe if I had, I would have made a different choice. So if you're watching this and you're still living in your own home, cherish every moment. Appreciate the little things. Waking up in your own bed, cooking your own meals, deciding how you want to spend your day. These are freedoms that seem small until they're gone. And once they are, you'll miss them more than you ever thought possible. If you found this message valuable, let me know in the comments below. What are your thoughts? Do you know someone who regrets moving into a nursing home? Are you facing this decision yourself? Your stories matter, and sharing them might just help someone else who's struggling with this choice. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps us continue creating content that informs and inspires. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope you take these words to heart, and whatever decision you make, I hope it's one that truly serves you. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.